¿Ya? Ya, perfecto. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos en el Goethe-Institut de Madrid. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Voy a hacer la introducción en español porque ya tenemos, ¿no?, la traducción. Sí. Hay una traducción simultánea en inglés durante toda la tarde y luego para la última mesa igual tenemos también una traducción en francés, desde el francés y hacia el francés, así que en las tres idiomas. Bueno, bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Organizamos este encuentro de hoy en el contexto de nuestro proyecto europeo Deconfining Arts and Culture and Policies in Africa and Europe, que es un proyecto financiado por el programa europeo Europa Creativa. El Goethe-Institut de Madrid es uno de muchos socios, un proyecto de 4 años y bueno, estamos más o menos a la mitad en el segundo año. Y junto a nuestras cómplices, Sylvia Amann y Vydia Tamby, que vais a conocer hoy por la tarde porque también tienen un papel importante, nosotros tenemos como un pequeño grupo de trabajo y la idea es de acompañar este proyecto más bien en un nivel reflexivo. Y lo que hacemos entonces aquí en Madrid es organizar residencias artísticas para artistas que trabajan entre los dos continentes, que trabajan también en temáticas, ¿no?, de los dos continentes, África y Europa, y luego también organizar justamente estos encuentros o bien conferencias. Y lo que intentamos es de tratar modelos diferentes que hemos analizado, que existen, modelos de confinamiento en las relaciones culturales entre los dos continentes. Así que el año pasado hemos hablado del confinamiento en un nivel más bien territorial y este año hemos querido hablar de el confinamiento en un nivel social y también del medio ambiente. Porque claro, aunque hay muchas diferencias, también creo que compartimos, que somos todo parte de este mundo y compartimos también retos, sobre todo desde el cambio climático y de la emancipación social. Así que hemos querido dedicar este encuentro y ayer ya hemos proyectado una película para un poco inaugurar esta reflexión, hablar del papel de las mujeres y el agua y aportar justamente perspectivas del sector cultural, de los artistas, de los dos continentes, de África y de Europa, porque creemos que el arte, la cultura puede llevar justamente perspectivas, puede pensar otros mundos, puede pensar utopías y imaginar otras formas también de relacionarnos entre nosotros y también justamente en las relaciones culturales entre los dos continentes que pueden existir. Así que hoy empezamos con una conversación en movimiento que se llama Mujer, Agua, Vida, por Amy Weickaane, que vais a ver en un momento. Luego hablamos un poco más del contexto político en una conversación entre Kirsten Dunlop, CEO del Climate KIC, y Sylvia Amann, experta de políticas europeas, que se intitula Cultura y Clima en la Unión Europea. Y luego al final tenemos una mesa redonda moderada justamente por Vydia Tamby, asesora cultural del alcalde de Dakar, con Ana Lessing-Menjibar, Afrie y Lucía Mbomío Rubio. Muchas gracias por estar aquí para justamente traer unas perspectivas más bien del sector cultural o bueno, también del periodismo. Y Ana, por ejemplo, que también ha sido una de las artistas en residencia aquí, que nos puede justamente hablar un poco de esta experiencia. La traducción, muchas gracias a las traductoras, la he mencionado y luego al final también os invitamos a un vino español. Así que buen encuentro, gracias por estar aquí y habríamos más posibilidades de continuar la discusión después. Gracias.
Evening. Good evening, Madrid. Good evening, the planet Earth. Good evening, all the living elements that are surrounding us tonight. I hope everyone understands English here. I know it is translated, but I am from a francophone country. It is rare that we can speak our native tongue, as we were an old French colony. And I'm part of those people. Coloniality, Anyway, today we are together for Woman Water Life, a performance and keynote that will immerse you in the essence of life through the prism of water. At least we all speak the water language, right? Water is a fundamental element for the woman who carries and gives life. This symbolic ritual will convey the harsh reality of a woman and a planet drying up. Woman and planet, woman and earth, woman and water. Two entities deprived of their vital essence struggle to perpetuate life. So I come with a ritual tonight. I want you to join us as we explore how water, that vital element, irrigates the woman's body, just as it nourishes the sap of trees and the rivers that flow through our lands. I invite you to dive into the unique challenge faced by Black women in Africa. Today, we will raise crucial questions together about equity, justice, social justice, ecological issues, and of course, women's rights. Let's build together a bridge between Africa and Europe on these critical issues. Good evening. I didn't come alone. Let me introduce you to Kama. You will Google it later. Kama is my shrine today. Our shrine all together. Sometimes we need to hold on something, And I bring my shrine from my Serer land. Another word to Google. West Africa, Senegal. So she will be here with us to testify, witness our reconnection, because we talk about deconfining, right? And about deconfining, I was just like looking for the real meaning of the word deconfining. I went on Google or ChatGPT to find some synonyms. Deconfining or deconfine mean release, liberate, unleash, and free. A kind of emancipation. I mean, deconfining meaning all this word led me to another word. Maybe trendy, maybe not, but for people like me, super rooted and valuable. And this word is decolonizing. And I was like, okay, deconfining, decolonizing, they all lies in the process of removing constraint, a kind of a liberation from a form of control, of a form of restrictions. So I like the title. Ancestors are talking. I am dry. I don't get wet anymore. I am dry as a woman. You know what does it mean? A woman who is dry. My body is like a desert, arid and barren. That means that no life can spring from this thirsty soil. I'm dry, right? I cannot get wet anymore, missing water. They call me Mother Nature. They call me the planet Earth. And I am a woman, of course, who's dry and cannot get wet anymore. The rivers that once flowed within me are becoming memories. Their whisper were lost in the wind of desolation. I am Mother Nature. I am the planet Earth. I am a woman. My cracked skin is a testament to the life that once existed here. As I'm dry today, we are dry. Women, planet, nature. There's a say that there's more water on Earth than soil, but still we dry. The life within me cries out, thirsting for sustenance, yet I have none to give. My wells run dry. Did I say it? I am dry. There's no more water in me. You know what it is, a woman who's dry? She cannot give life. She needs that water flowing inside her body. We need water here because this is from here that we're giving life, you know? Whoever we are on earth, we all of us have taken once the same path to come to life. This is my truth. This is my plea to the world. It is a reflection of the pain that we both endure on this planet. Because I'm drying up. I can't give life. Mother Nature is drying up and cannot give life. I told you I came with a ritual, right? From where I'm from, we used to connect with the earth, the plants, the trees, all the living elements. And when you don't know where to go anymore, pour some water, the water will find a way. Just follow, and you will find your way back to who you are, where you live, why you are on earth. Kind of a wake-up call for our shared responsibilities to do something. And I believe in rituals, I believe in actions, you know? They speak louder than words. So we're gonna do a ritual together tonight. When we travel, when we do anything, going for an exam, our mother opened the way with some water to give us the power and the energy to find our way. To bring all the energy together, we can flow like water. So tonight, I'm inviting you to join me in the sacred ritual of watering my body. Join me in the ritual of watering my body. My body is a woman body. I am Mother Nature. I am the planet Earth. You know, most of us have plants at home. We don't need the plant to come and ask for water. We water them because we value them. We want them to stay alive. We want them to stay alive and strong. We don't need any wake-up call to water our plants. We just come and water them. We give them water, we give them life. Between women and plants, I'll let you put them on a balance and think about what it is important to water as well. Join me in the watering of my body. I'm calling upon ancient spirits and modern powers. Some people do politics here, right? I'm calling upon ancient spirit and modern powers to nourish the thirsty land within me and bring forth life from the depth of my being. Join me in this sacred ritual of watering my body. Join me in watering my body. To have a revolution, we need thousands and thousands of small actions. Put them together and you will have a revolution. Join me in the watering of my body. I call upon communities. I call upon leaders. I call upon you, the public, to use your unique powers and responsibilities to take this collective duty to irrigate the earth once more. Join me in this sacred ritual of watering my body. Join me in watering my body. We will moisten. We will hydrate. We will plant seeds of hope. Those seeds of our shared responsibility to make me wet again. Even just a little. To recreate the essence of life the essence of water, circularity, mobility, dignity, and sustainability. Join me in the watering of my body and let's together change the narrative. Water means a lot of things, I know, depend on cultures and everything. But for me, water means as well the Mediterranean, in Spain, where fish have bodies in their stomach. Another way of using water in a bad way. Let's just switch it. Reshape the narrative together. Feel the drops of our united effort as they seep into my skin. Join me in the watering of my body, guys. With each drop, I pray and urge for renewal. I vow to cherish the life within me. Woman, water, life, Mother Nature. We can do something together. Together, we can just create a stream, a bridge between Europe and Africa. Let it be a river flowing through my veins. It will revive, it will restore, and it will reawaken the essence of life and subsistence. I call upon every means at your disposal. Don't underestimate anything, any action. I call upon all your means, every means that you have, to revive the vein of this earth, to hydrate its branch, and to bring forth the renewal of Mother Nature herself. She's a woman, drying up, you remember? Then join me. Join me in the ritual of watering my body. Together we shall tonight witness a sacred bloom with all our energy together. Our hands, our heart, our soul united in harmony, which is a super rare thing today. And in this act of renewal together, we will make me wet again. Me being wet again is me giving life again. Join me in this ritual of watering my body. Let's take a moment. Come back to reality a little bit. I'm moved. I'm sorry. I really feel that I'm mad in nature. Please welcome Madrid. Welcome in the very essence of life, through the prism of water. This element for the woman who carries and gives life. My ritual here tonight is to convey the harsh reality of a woman and a planet drying up. I am a woman, right? It's quite obvious, I think. But mostly, I am an African woman. Put them together, you have another meaning. Coloniality. I'm not going to talk about the Venice and all of these things, you know. So water tonight is my weapon. Water is the embodiment of adaptability, mirroring the dynamic nature of African societies that flow and evolve with time, shaping and reshaping identities. Water is the universal connector, transcending boundaries and linking the stories of triumph, survival, and the indomitable spirit of the people. Water is a celebration of an unstoppable force, a symbol of empowerment and liberation that irrigates the collective landscape of Africa, echoing the power of Black women. And when I say Black women, I talk about all the dark-skinned women in the diaspora in Africa, India, South America. We are all on the same level of lacking dignity, value, and rights. So the conversation I'm proposing to you today is a pledge, because it takes on a particular dimension if we consider the situation of Black women, who quite often, like always, find themselves at the intersection of multiple forms of discrimination, particularly when they are of an African origin. Black women are often placed at the bottom of the social ladder and face increased difficulties. They embody resilience in the face of ecological and social marginalization. So this conversation must raise crucial questions about equity, social justice, and women's rights. It invites reflection of how we, as a global society, value and preserve our most precious resources: women, water. By drawing a parallel between the women's brightness and that of our planet, I'm sure I can raise awareness and inspire concrete actions for a future where the rights of all women and the health of our natural resources are guaranteed. I worship us. I value us through the prism of water. You know, when you pour water, because you don't know where this water is coming from, right? Maybe it's come from Senegal, maybe it's come from Sweden, maybe it's come from India, maybe it's come from Spain, who knows? When you pour the water, you just see water, a shared language, an element that unites us all. This concept of color is not there. So why should we put this concept of capitalism, this concept of coloniality, this concept of who have the right to access to the water or not? Why? Why certain people on the earth can fill up their swimming pool and why others are dying on their way to have some water to drink? Do you think it is normal? for an element that is showing any difference. When we drink water, we all feel the same. So how can we bring that balance where we all have access to water? And why on an ecological field, certain population will lack water more than others? Why? That's my question tonight. Why? Why the water that don't know any boundaries, that can flow everywhere, go everywhere in the planet, should be stopped for certain and abundant for others? Why? Why the women are the living element that are suffering the most of social and ecological issues? Why? Why our young girls have to die for water? Why? Why don't we just take our responsibility and just decide that we cannot disconnect what nature had put together? We cannot disconnect our living elements, water, to us women. We cannot disconnect ourselves for our own planet. We can colonize, that's right, I know, but we cannot disconnect. We can give power, we can take power, but please, let's don't disconnect nature. We are living elements, we are women. Between our legs, life flows. We need water. We need social justice when it's come to water and women. Mostly in communities that are already at the very bottom of the social ladder. Woman, water, life. Deconfining, liberation, freeing, unleashing, emancipating practice, that's true. But also our relationship to it. So I want a commitment tonight. If we can just all commit for one thing that we all share. We the undersigned pledge, restore balance and harmony, to preserve the water of the earth, to honor women's body, and to reject capitalist exploitation. We understand that the fight against dryness is a promise to the world where all life is valued, where every woman can flourish, and where the earth herself is held in reverence as the holy source of all existence. Like women, maybe I explained before, we're talking about the bridge between Africa and Europe. Let's talk about Africa. Like women, Africa is facing a double crisis. It wants abundant waters, essential to the ecosystem, and communities are shrinking due to irresponsible overexploitation and climate change, of course. Our rivers are drying up. Our lakes are shrinking, and groundwater reserves are being exhausted. They're threatening both human survival and ecological balance. This profound link means that where life begins, Africa, life can also end there. It also can end there if these crises are not resolved. But at the same time, the abuse and exploitation of African women in all its forms, who are hugely disadvantaged by water poverty and gender-based violence. All of these things represent a metaphysical dryness, draining communities of their vitality, of their potential. I will use my example, my story. But my story echoes and resonates in many other African women on exile. I'm going to sit because this is important. When an African woman migrates to Europe, partly to distance herself from all these intersecting crises, she doesn't come alone, you know, when she migrates here. She brings with her a deep connection to the land and water of her own homeland. I didn't come alone in Europe 30 years ago, 25 years ago. I did not come alone. I came with a history. I came with connection. I came from something from my motherland. However, when we come and migrate, we also face new challenges, right? We have to navigate unfamiliar landscape, and we have to face discrimination and marginalization. So it's not that complicated to recognize and acknowledge. Because by recognizing the intrinsic value of water, the intrinsic value of women, and the resilience of immigrant communities, we can forge a more equitable and sustainable future. It's about seeing people, hearing, recognizing, acknowledging. Through collective political action and solidarity. Solidarity is so rare now. It's like gold, you know? But it is within us. We can just go and bring it back up here. It's a will. So through collective political action and solidarity, informed and supported by our ecofeminism wisdom, because we used to be eco-feminist before the word exists, right? In African tradition and practice, connecting ourselves to nature is not trendy or new. This is our identity. But let's call it ecofeminism. That's the name today. If all our actions are supported by the wisdom, the practice, I firmly believe that not only we will better preserve our rivers, but we will also restore dignity of women And we will help communities in Africa and Europe to flourish. This music is in Serer. The lyrics are in Serer. Serer is my mother tongue. From island named Saloum Island in Senegal. Senegal in West Africa, in a Francophone zone, the old French colony. Talk about water, we call it Fofi. Fofi means water in my language. Mihe simna pangol ke. Pangol andum na pangol rimem. Rob sen andum na ten yat rimem, ten yarem ten rimem. Me hoya pangol lima wahe na naham, me hoya pangol. Me hoya pangol ke. Me hoya pangol ke anyojor, pangol ke Sangomar, pangol ke in. Me hoya pangol Nimambodan wahe nanaham. Me hoya pangol ke. Nisa hidup ane ken laya andiram ane in. Me hoya pangol ke. It's not possible to translate feelings. We are approaching the end of the ritual that I open circle, you know. Now we will need to close that ritual. Send it somewhere. Before we close that ritual, let me drink some water. This last part is an invitation to act, to close this ritual tonight. To conclude this ritual with the action that will elevate our conviction, to seal this ceremony with a conscious act that will resonate throughout the universe. I will ask each of you to join me in making this symbolic gesture. Don't worry, no one will have to dance or do crazy things. It's a gesture. I ask each of you to join me in a symbolic gesture. It's an act that will bind us to a common pact the preservation of our waters, and the dignity of women across the continent, Africa and Europe. By making this gesture, you are affirming your pledge for change. By making this gesture, you are making a symbolic pledge to the universe and to the planet that feeds us. Words and long speeches are easy, but I believe in the ritual act, the one that takes roots in our hearts and our soul. The one that is filled with a deep conviction for change. This gesture, I'm asking, transcend the realms of political and communication. It is a genuine, a heavy, and a precise action that I'm asking you to perform, to conclude this ritual and send this symbol into the cosmos. I have brought some beans. I'm African. Beans, food, all the time. So I have brought some beans for you. And I have brought calabash. For those who don't know, this is a calabash. Beans are emblematic of abundance and the cycle of life. Their womb-like form hold ancestral spirits and feminine magic, right? Signifying resilience and the potential of rebirth. Those beings symbolize the sacred journey of women's dignity, demanding restoration from colonial shadows. We are tired being strong Black women. So I will invite you to place in this calabash I will bring to you the act of a profound desire for change and reparation for the sake of women's dignity, for the sake of the planet. So when I will pass among you, our energy will blend, creating a bond. Please prepare your beans. And please place in this calabash I will bring to you your gesture, your act, your revolution, your testament, your commitment with that bean. Maybe I need to explain what is this. What it is, a calabash, and why we have it tonight. This calabash is a powerful tool, a powerful symbol in my culture. It is present in every form of home. In our ancient animistic practices and tradition, and in our modern practices, the calabash is there and endures. It can carry water, it carries food. In fact, it carries life. When there is nothing left to eat at home, when the dry season is exhausting certain communities and families, we live with the season. Somewhere in the house, there is always a mother's calabash containing food, water, and life. So please place your pledge in my calabash, which I will bring to you. We have more beans. Wow, I can feel the energy of the beans. Thank you. As an artist deeply connected to the theme of this conference, I'm honored to open today's discussions at the Goethe-Institut Madrid. This event, supported by the EU, seeks to explore the intersection of gender and ecological issues, focusing on the vital topics of water and women. Together, we will embrace into the intrinsic value of water and the essential role of women, fostering a dialogue that bridges continents and pave the way for a more just and sustainable world. I invite you to stay after this performance. Don't forget, now we have a pack. My name is Weickaane. I am a Senegalese woman living between the vibrant streets of Paris, the creative vibes of Malmö in Sweden, and the spirited rhythm of Dakar, my city. Like water and woman, I am both a fragmented and unifying force. Welcome to Madrid. Let's dive into this journey together. Jokanjal. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your energy. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We are bringing you to a slightly different world. Now it's time for a debate after this great performance. I think we have very much appreciated. Hello, Kirsten Dunlop.
Hello, Sylvia.
Very nice to have you here and that you have found a moment to join us here in Madrid to discuss about future perspectives related to climate, water, women, international relations. Many topics were already on the scene, on the stage just before. So I think it made us reflect a lot, also to enter other dimensions. Let's see how we go ahead now with a debate about EU policies, but I think we will expand a little bit the range of our exchange. So today we are with Kirsten Dunlop. She is the CEO of an EU initiative which is called Climate KIC. My name is Sylvia Amann. I'm linked to the Deconfining project, and I'm working very much in strategic policy development, mainly related to culture. Yes, maybe we leave it with that. Other information can be certainly found on the web or on the social media. Maybe let's start. I think Climate KIC is for many people something they can even not imagine what should be or what is a Climate KIC. I think we should start with explaining maybe a little bit the European context, and maybe already to keep in mind when we start discussing, this was something which I have taken from the artistic work we've just seen. It's a collective task. We have different languages. All languages are more policies and programs and projects. Maybe this is already a little bit the starting point also. What does the Climate KIC do?
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to acknowledge one part of my identity is Australian. And when you are Australian, you usually start with a phrase that acknowledges the Indigenous lands on which you stand.
Mm.
And I want to acknowledge the strangeness of moving from a performance on stage about place and people and water into a debate-style discussion about policy and programs and projects and European institutions. In many ways, it encompasses both the richness of this world, and in many ways, it encompasses some of its enormous disconnects. So, KIC. KIC stands for Knowledge, Innovation, Community. And really fundamentally, it's one of a number of organizations that have the same title. And it really is all about bringing together different actors. Some of them are universities, some of them are big industries, some of them are very, very small startups or micro startups or SMEs. Some of them are individuals, some of them are cities or regional governments, and some of them are organizations expert in research and technology. The principle of a KIC is to create the conditions for those very diverse actors to choose to join forces and act together, and in particular to direct their effort to address particular societal challenges. In our case, climate is the thing that we have been addressing since 2010 when we were created. And the means by which that is addressed, the point of a KIC, is through education and through research and innovation. And in our particular case, because our challenge is planetary and our particular problem is humans and the transformation of human practices, expectations, existences, understanding, sense of identity, relationship to one another and to the planet, our particular focus is on innovation to self-transform, to help transform peoples, plural, the way we live, the way we move, the way we travel, the way we do business. This is an organization that was born in Europe. Its remit has been to start by addressing European ways of living. We now work across 60 countries. We work in Africa, we work in South America and Latin America, we work in India, we work in Southeast Asia. And so much of what we are also doing is extending the context and the construct of community into multiple places where our value is to act as a network of networks. But if I used an organic metaphor, to act like mycelium, like fungi, the fibers that create and hold fertile soil and help ideas to grow and thrive and to connect.
So it's kind of understanding that it's a collective challenge and therefore it needs a collective action. So it's something which brings all kind of different backgrounds together in order to find common solutions or new, better ways forward, and in your specific KIC related to climate change. Can you maybe highlight with one very concrete example what is going on in your network? And maybe you have even a water-related example.
Well, so yes, there are many things going on in the network. There are innovations. Maybe it's important to explain one critical evolution in our existence, which was a learning evolution, i.e. we reflected upon ourselves and made a change in ourselves as a result. As a community, for the first 6 or 7 years of our life, we invested a lot of effort in cultivating new solutions for climate. There might have been solutions for example, in the Netherlands, in how to capture rain, because it rains every single day, since we are talking about water, onto roofs or onto road surfaces and store it and enable it to be used. Or it might be a solution developed in Tanzania, for example, for capturing, for condensation and using condensation to store drinking water and create drinking water just from the surface temperature of the soil between the day and the night. So a number of different kind of ranges of solutions. But we reflected around about 7 years ago on a problem, which is that, and I'm going to use an analogy of water since we're talking about water. Our approach to innovation was an approach that is widespread across the world. It was all about the generation of ideas and a big volume of ideas, and then the selection of some of those ideas progressively on what felt or what appeared to be more effective, and particularly with the logic of what would be more effective to receive commercial support. And this is the kind of classic incubator accelerator cycle. Our reflection was, then you have a lot of droplets of water, but what forms them into a river? And above all, what forms a river into a watershed or a river system that would enable whole landscapes to regenerate or to transform? And so our reflection was, okay, we need to change the way in which we are enabling innovation and supporting innovation. And I'm going to get to the example of how we turn this into practice. We decided that the world would fill up with more organizations working on solutions for the many, many challenges that we face in food, in water, in biodiversity, in global temperature, and instead to shift ourselves to take responsibility for the outcome, for the destination. So if our responsibility taking was that European cities needed to be completely decarbonized in a period of time compatible with the kind of change that we need to survive and thrive, then we would take responsibility for creating that space of action, that kind of pace, the scale, the integratedness of solutions we would need. So we set out a call to action in 2018, and we started to work with cities, we started to work with ports, we started to work with regional governments, with industries, some financial institutions. We introduced the idea of what we called a deep demonstration, because we were paying attention to the fact that one of the big problems that we have is a deficit of imagination. It's very hard to imagine what a city like Madrid would really be like if it were completely sustainable and regenerative. And you can maybe imagine one single house with a lot of different renewable solutions, but imagining a whole city is hard. So we worked on the principle that we should create demonstrations that were whole cities and whole places and harness all of the innovations that could be relevant, not just technical, but also social and policy. So one of these was a project with the Port of Valencia to think about how could you completely transform the Port of Valencia to decarbonize the energy solutions, to really look at waste and water pollution, to think about the flow onto land of goods, to change the way the port is financing, incentivizing people who come. So working in an integrated way with all of the actors involved.
So in a way you are between the ideas and then large-scale demonstrators in a way, so that this whole transformation becomes tangible, and in that sense with the idea that it becomes a real mainstreaming, so that this is then really done in all the European port cities at the very end. Yeah. I look quickly at our audience if there are still some question marks related to KIC or related to the activities and projects Kirsten just has explained. It looks like you are still with us on the trip, so we will check at certain moments if you have questions, because we know the EU context is always very complex, and if you do hear the vocabulary for the first time, it might be a little bit more complex to follow the details. That's why I asked you also for examples. I want to continue on something else. You said, okay, you had lots of ideas, very innovative projects, also related to water, the large scale demonstrators, etc. And then I've read a very interesting phrase on your website. A just, climate resilient, beautiful future is within our reach. Sounds really good, but our daily reality, when we talk with neighbors or when we read newspapers or when we follow the political news recently, especially again, the Green Deal under pressure, etc. What makes you so optimistic? So why do we read that phrase on your website?
Well, I would first of all describe it as a state of determination. Optimism comes and goes. I am profoundly optimistic. I'm a mother. I cannot afford not to be optimistic. But that is a statement about determination. And it is a statement about how people and systems can change. So if we look at the work that we do within Europe and outside of Europe, we see that there are very many possibilities for changing the way in which we're living and changing the way in which we cultivate food, the way in which we understand and relate to the world. We see that there is an immense abundance of inventiveness. There is an abundance of goodwill. There is an abundance of courage. and there is an abundance of will and determination of people to act. We run a program, for example, called Climate Launchpad, which we run across the entire world. And it is a program that opens a door to individuals who want to make action on climate in a broader sense. So one thing I should be very careful to explain, when we say climate, we are not referring to greenhouse gas emissions reductions through renewable energy. We are referring to biodiversity, pollution, water, waste, food systems, the way we live, the way we move, the way we feed ourselves, the way we dress, in the broader sense of how we are behaving that is having an impact to change the way in which this planetary system functions, a negative impact. So when we run Climate Launchpad, we are seeing constantly the wealth of ideas and possibilities and courage of people stepping forward, willing to learn, wanting to apply things in particular places and find ways to engage with what they're doing. So if I take that on the one side, and then I take on the other side a program that we are running at the moment in Europe, in the European context, which is a program that was initiated by the European Commission. It is borrowing an idea from John F. Kennedy, the American president, of going to the moon. And instead of a moonshot, it's an earth shot. There are 5 of these programs. They're called missions. And one of them, we work in 4 of them, actually. One of them we lead, and it is focused on transforming cities in Europe, 112 cities in total by 2030. And I look at the courage of the people who are working in those cities, despite very volatile political cycles, despite finding obstacles constantly, their determination to do something, Madrid is one of these cities, a determination to do something in time, in a connected, joined up way. And I connect these 2 things. I often hear people say, we have all of the solutions, we just have to implement them. And I find that particularly, how I describe this, I find it superficial in the way in which it underestimates the fact that we means us, we are a complicated species and we don't behave rationally. And that implementing is the most complicated thing of all because it requires you to change. But nothing stops the fact that we have the power to make a change, and we do have the ingenuity to bring about the differences that we have. So then the last piece of this kind of storytelling narrative of why did we choose to publish on our website the fact that we believe it is possible to create a resilient, just, and beautiful future. If you know the film Tomorrowland, with George Clooney, if you're a George Clooney fan, you might have watched it for that reason. You might watch it for another reason if you're me, which is it has a parable in it, which is the parable, an American Indian parable around the idea of every human experience is structured as a constant tussle between two emotions or 2 experiences. It's told in the story of 2 wolves that are constantly fighting within us, one representing hope and one representing despair. And the parable is around the fact that one of them wins, but it depends not on how strong it is, it depends on which one you feed. And this story about the idea that we get what we invest our energy into. So if we invest our energy in stories of despair, stories of fragmentation, stories of conflict, and we will get that as an outcome. If we invest our stories and our storytelling and our imagination, individual, collective, community and tribal, into stories of what is possible, we make it possible for that to come into being. And that's what innovation is about.
So in that sense, the futures are always not yet written. And we can always invest in these stories or other stories.
The futures are what you make.
Exactly. And it brings us also back to acting instead of reacting. So to become actors of change again, and also of positive change, with the motivation to go forward. And in order to translate this kind of framework, it was important to have such a phrase on your website.
Yes, because I watch that the thing we are really in a race against is time, but really it's despair. The thing we have to make sure we don't lose the race against is despair. And we will win that if we can really collectively believe that we are capable of transforming ourselves and make that possible because we believe it enough. And we are beginning to depict what that looks like.
But when we then reflect further, we are in a very specific framework on the European context, and even more specific in the EU context. It's very extraordinary advantage situation compared to large parts of the rest of the world, or large parts of the world, to formulate it much better. So in that sense, I think there is also this big topic of a just transition. And of course, from a European point of view, when we have all these ecosystems, all these institutions, we can do specific things. Of course, we exchange with other continents, but we see it also in the big negotiations when we are entering the COP phase on climate change, the big UN initiatives, that there is a lot of different perspectives, standpoints, also geography, frameworks to go ahead. In the context of the Deconfining project, we have also addressed this topic of justice, as it concerns, of course, also the whole cultural development, cultural cooperation. So in our context, we had a recent publication on mobility justice, also from an African perspective, South African perspective. And there, for me, one word or one phrase remained yes, was important for me, and I continued to reflect on that. It's about the word ethic of care. How does this resonate with your work? How does this resonate in a KIC, in a European policy making and project framework? What could be a related ethic of care in this context?
First of all, to acknowledge the responsibility of origins. Europe is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. It's the birthplace of almost every single root cause issue we have in the way in which economies and economic models and industrial production is structured. So acknowledging the responsibility that comes with having originated a lot of that, and the responsibility of thinking about the interdependencies, the consequences, the interdependencies of how you adjust anything. So if I give one example at the moment, I would see I am living in Europe because I chose to come here as a place in the world where I think there is the greatest possibility of doing something systematic and structural to change the way the planet has bought into a particular paradigm around civilization and civilized life. And I don't mean that describes how the planet lives, but I think it describes a version of aspirational civilization of modernity, which is completely destructive and which unfortunately pops up in so many different places. If I have conversations with cities in the southern part of the African continent, there are conversations about aspiring to look like Hong Kong or Shanghai. And Hong Kong or Shanghai aspire to look like New York, or are modeled on a bigger, better, more expensive version in New York. And New York is modeled on versions of the city of the center of London. There are elements around the way in which a set of aspirational ideas about what it means to live in human community have traveled the world and created challenges. So I live here because I think Europe has equipped itself with an acknowledgement of responsibility, and at least in a number of its laws and policies and political, or at least pan-European intentions, the will to do something about that. Then there is a constant wave effect. So in its efforts to show leadership, Europe has introduced policies like the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which requires anyone trading into Europe to comply with a set of standards about where materials have come from, where products have come from, how sustainably they've been sourced. If you're in Colombia, that has a material effect on the businesses that derive their livelihoods in the Amazon and in Amazon foodstuffs, Amazon production. It suddenly forces businesses there at a completely different scale and far, far away to try and work out how will they maintain supply into Europe of what they have been doing. It's potentially a positive reinforcing move, that is the idea, but it's not one that you can enact without assuming the responsibility of care and a duty of care to partner and to support and understand and co-learn how could we collectively raise the bar on the supply of anything around the world in a way that is actually sustainable and regenerative, and start to ask questions about why people need to source from different places. So for me, there's some of this is about really, on the one hand, this is a continent that is trying to acknowledge those responsibilities, that is trying to understand how to let go and unlearn. It isn't always successful, but it is self-reflective. But it also needs to keep pushing the boundaries of how that happens and the unintended or partially intended consequences of choices and decisions.
So this is more or less the whole area, maybe first to start with fair trade, and in that sense to enlarge that notion. We are having similar debates also in Culture for Fair Culture, related also to the UNESCO framework, etc. But for me, this has still more regulative or, how could I say, economic dimension, as far as we have discussed it right now. And I wonder also about the human dimension, because caring is also something deeply human. We talk today also about the roles of women and women in society. Caring work is also one of the related topics. So in that sense, when you maybe reflect on the KIC as such, as an institution, would you say it's a caring institution? Is it a just institution? Is it an international institution?
So it is an international institution. My mind is following the sequence of caring, just, and international. I'm not sure that international institutions necessarily follow from being both caring and just. It is an institution that cares, definitely. And I would just think, I mean, for example, one of the, so caring is a human experience, a human exchange. It's an organization that attracts and actively seeks to attract people who care for stewardship, for regeneration, for nurturing, for restoration, for distribution, for justice, definitely. We focus where we are working. So, for example, we work a lot on urban transformation. We work a lot on land use, landscapes, bioregions, food systems, water systems, and we work in industrial transformation, materials, value chains, and so on. Where we're working in land, we know that stewardship of land, caring of land, is something that is highly patterned by the gender of the person who is providing stewardship. Women are extraordinarily effective stewards of land. And because they apply a quality of care over multiple generations and a sense of what care implies and requires, which is a willingness to accept interdependency and accept relationship and relatedness constantly. So to be always thinking not just of yourself, but of somebody else, something else. So that it would be an aspect of the way in which we introduce a principle of care. Are we looking, we have a program, for example, that supports smallholder farmers in Africa with a line of financing of credit to help use satellite information and climate resilient seed to work out where to plant and what to plant and how frequently to change. But that is a pattern that then exposes the farmer to a financial risk. So we combine that with a line of insurance that takes the risk away from the farmer, because why should a smallholder farmer bear the risk, and puts it back into European financial institutions that can happily bear that risk. And then the cultivation of the farmers are guaranteed by an offtake agreement taking en masse. The interesting thing that we learned is that we also needed to really bring in and curate this is a project entirely run by local partners, a gender lens, because it makes such a big difference if those farmers are women, but then that needs to be very carefully curated, and we need a real duty of care on once it becomes apparent that they are receiving the support and that they are the attractor, then there is also a social immune system that responds and starts to try to interfere or interject or to create kind of brokering mechanisms behind. So then working out how do you then take care of the consequences of that and try to preserve this notion of women holding the front line and being at the center of the attention.
Maybe a short add-on on my previous question. So the ethic of care. At the very beginning, you said you have also a part of Australian in your background. And you recalled the land acknowledgement statements. We know that also from Canada. In that sense, we discussed also that Europe has a responsibility for what has happened in previous centuries and partly still happens. So it's not only a question of the past. In that sense, did you ever reflect related to the Climate KIC to come up with something similar than the land acknowledgement? So to acknowledge formally, because we know storytelling is important. It's important to do the right statements, as we have already discussed. So in that sense, to acknowledge the role Europeans had, for example, on the African continent, and in that sense also to bring that forward on page 1 of your website.
So it depends what would we bring forward that also is about partnership and ownership of who you are. Because I'm also very uncomfortable about statements which, because they have lost their connection with origins, are tokenistic or come across as tokenistic. So you are making a statement because that appears to be what everybody needs to say, but it's not coming from a place of where you're genuinely acting. So as an organization, as a European organization, first of all, you were asking about justice. One of the things that is central to our sense of what we need to be doing in cities and regions is, for example, the recommendations that the Club of Rome have come forward with Earth for All on pointing out the fact that you can't solve anything globally if you don't start by addressing poverty and inequality. Those things matter wherever you are. So in a European context, one of the challenges is Europe is often asked to take responsibility and should, but is also not paying attention to the injustices within its own system and within its own backyard. And there is a hypocrisy in standing for a set of principle-based behaviors and not applying them to your own realities of urban slums, of migrants, of communities, marginalized communities that are not integrated or are not given access and affordability in different ways. So that's one principle, and it matters enormously in cities, for example, or in the relationship between cities and rural communities on access to affordable mobility. The second is, as we move in outside of Europe, we have traveled where we have been asked to travel either by European governments who wish to provide funding into the development context, into a developing world context, or by local partners and actors who've come and said, we want to learn about how Europe has created these ecosystems of trust among different actors. We run a program for the Swedish International Development Agency called the Systems Innovation Learning Partnership, which is about how could a funder from the north part of Europe learn how to give up power to local actors in Africa and South America who choose what money is spent on what, starting from the very, very beginning. Because one of the biggest challenges of being an organization working in innovation, handling money to enable others to act, is that that is an inherent power structure. You are passing on the power, you are holding the power of money, and the power of money is coded with the power of the funder thinking that they want particular outcomes, which implies that they know better what outcomes are than whoever is local. So we are actively working to change, to use ourselves as a space where you can practice a difference. But that means we're coming, saying as an organization, we want to do this, but we need to do it on our own skins as much as everyone else's skins. And it may be that, but we are more focused on the doing than putting a big banner on the website saying we are about decolonizing European development practice.
But the banner is not only doing a banner, it's also, I think, something which is expected from many parts of the world, that Europe finally becomes active in that field. We can reclaim or restate the example of Canada. They did it internally, but also they communicated very strongly to the world that the whole topic of indigenous sovereignty, etc., is crucial. And these are, I think, elements which brings us also again back more of this, how could I say, symbolic context, and also in that sense, again, back to culture and the arts, because we can understand in a completely different way when we listen to artists, when we see artistic creations. And we all know also that transformation is a cultural change and shift. And in that sense, I think it's also important to understand better the role of culture and the arts. And there are two levels. One you have already mentioned, related to storytelling power, and also to imagine new futures and to show new futures. But on the other hand, we are having also creative industry sectors heavily causing also damage to the planet, of course, because a lot of energy is used, a lot of resources are used. What is your perspective on the cultural dimension of climate change? How do you support concretely in the KIC the cultural dimension? And how far do you go to integrate also art and creative industries?
So there are many answers to this. We are beginning. The history of the Climate KIC has been more focused on nature-based solutions, technology solutions, and because it's also been operating within a context of a focus within the European programming on technology development and education and so on. So I would consider us to be at the beginning in many ways of what needs to be a very significant expansion of investment of activity in the arts, culture and creative industries component of helping the world transform. We have a partnership with the new KIC that has started on culture and creative arts and industries for that purpose. But we have done quite a bit of work over the last 3-4 years on learning. Really, I mean, for me, the point of what we are doing is to accelerate our learning, learn from others, create the context to learn, because there's so much more to understand than to assume. So we did a lot of work with the night sector in Amsterdam to understand what's the relationship between the night sector and climate action. We did a lot of work with comedians, stand-up comedians, particularly bringing dark humor and irony to self-reflect on our inaction or our paralysis or our ways of disassociating what we care about with the way we behave every day. So we have been experimenting with how do we bring this in now that we are under huge pressure of time and scale to really help places transform as quickly as possible. We are now really deepening our efforts in a number of elements. One has to do with what I referred to before as the deficit of imagination. If you think about the end of the Second World War, and you had so much excess manufacturing capacity from the US in particular, manufacturing arms, that for the next 50 years, in every single film, television, fashion magazine, billboard advertisement, there were pictures of an ideal modern life. Domestic appliances, a car, a home, and we collectively, globally, in lots of places bought into that idea. If we were to ask ourselves, what is the equivalent systematic investment in depicting what a sustainable ecological life and a just, resilient world look like on everything that we see, how would we begin to kind of program our minds to believe and to kind of to participate in that? So I think that needs to be part of the way in which we work. I think there's a huge piece around the psychology of human transformation. We move through fear at the last minute and too late. We move through hope and possibility way earlier and in much more collective. And indeed, I really want to recall the principle of solidarity. So how do we invest in that? But I think, and there's enormous work to be done on the creative industries and institutions, the museums and spaces in which people can see and experiment and understand, but the creative industries like gaming that are fueling generations of imagination in highly unsustainable ways and with relatively little that really helps people imagine a difference. But there's one last element, and that is catharsis. I think it is incredibly important for us to acknowledge people living in the global north, the swimming pool fillers up that was referred to before. They are going to need to let go. And they're going to need, and we are going to need collectively, to create rituals for grief and passing to help people let go. Because we cannot keep living the way we're doing, but we also need to acknowledge that rigidity happens when there's no cathartic passage. And we need that.
We know that we need that. We know that culture and arts have the power to tell these new stories, but isn't it instrumentalization of art and culture? We hear that quite often then from
the instrumentalization.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a cultural historian. So for me, everything that I ever learned about for the years that I studied was about civilizations and cultures that made themselves, literally made themselves into existence through images, through building, through stories, through depictions in all forms of media. And I suppose if you are sitting in 2024, you might look back at that and say that's instrumentalization. At the time, it was an entire embedding of art and science completely intertwined. It was the understanding that humans are imaginative beings, cultural beings, creative and social beings before anything else. And really building a world made in that way that then makes use of productive activity. So I think we need to step aside from giving ourselves that excuse. To the extent that we put art and culture in a kind of a nature preserve in a world that says, you know, pure artistic freedom, we need to keep these separate, we are not helping ourselves. We need to direct our imaginations to give form and space for doing things differently. We will only do that with art and culture.
But there is also the other side, of course. Culture and creative sectors is also economic fields, and there are also strong economic interests. And there you have also this resistance from the creative industries to say, okay, this is going too far and we cannot just stop touring and things like that. What would be your recommendations in order to overcome these resistance?
Get creative. You have resistance from every single industry sector, political context out there. Nobody likes to change. And we are discovering that as we leave it later and later and later, we are making choices every single day, and their choices weighed in lives. So if you are in a creative industry saying, well, I can't afford this, my argument would be get creative. That's your business.
So this makes me turn again to our audience. If there are reactions, because you are all from, or many from the creative and cultural sectors, artists, does our conversation make you react in a way or in another? Or are there questions, additional elements you would like to add? Also as engaged artists, because this is an artivist, I think we have quite many of them in our audience. It seems that we are not on a perfect wrong trip with our debate, so at least we have no official contests.
Either that or we're on such a wrong trip that we
Yeah.
have to back up.
We will see how they react in the break. Maybe to slowly come to the end of our conversation, I would like to open up a last block of exchange. Today we have the topic of water. And of course, water, women, is something which is deeply connected, which was very well also shown in the presentation we had. On the other hand, of course, water connects us all and would have maybe the potential even to connect us more than we think. I think we have heard today already that we can build bridges between the continents, but on the other hand, water has already built that bridge. We are connected through the whole water systems on the earth. So all what we do has impact, all what happens is with effects in other parts of the world and also in Europe. And here I'm coming also again back to this European African context. So while we see extreme weather in our countries, we see partly much more catastrophic climate change related events on the African continent. We had this year horrible floods in Kenya. We had record drought in Botswana or Namibia. And there is also this big difference that also resilience against these events is unevenly distributed. That means in Europe, when you are having floods, you are having insurance, or the state is helping you. In many other countries, states cannot afford to support. So this is also something which makes me think quite a lot related again to European responsibility. So also maybe to come up with a step forward. So maybe beyond projects. It brings us maybe also back again to caring, to solidarity, to justice. So what has this action or non-action on the European continent for consequences, and how could we act better? And what can the Climate KIC do to bring it again on your concrete daily working context?
So first of all, be very careful not to presume. We are, with regards to water and to the effects of climate change on resources, starting with water and the immediate knock-on effect that has on food, we are collectively facing experiences and conditions that none of us can imagine and that we have ever experienced. So I think for me, as a principle of the type of organization we are, go into this with a deep humility and a commitment to try and understand how to learn and how to partner. We are learning, so there are a few reflections that I want to bring backwards and forwards here. We are learning that we run quite a lot of work supporting local entrepreneurial ecosystems across Africa. So outside of Europe, what we seek to do is bring the experience and learnings, good, bad, ugly, of all sorts, to local entrepreneurial ecosystems, local innovation ecosystems, local communities, on how to create the kind of trust-based, distributed, multi-actor systems for innovating, not just the individual solution, trying to find money from a development bank, but the relationship of all sorts of solutions that can sustain a community in very specific ways. When you're doing that, that means you are very close, really close to the ground in hyper local ways. One of the things that's very apparent in the last 18 months is that African solutions for resilience and adaptation, particularly with regard to water and food, are way further advanced and ahead than anyone in Southern Europe, dealing with similar problems actually in terms of our aridity and temperature change. So how to construct, you know, there's a bit of me that's tempted to do a reverse colonization, but how to resist the temptation to do things in kind of black and white ways and construct genuinely symbiotic partnerships of learning, exchange, of discovery, acknowledging that we are all facing something unprecedented. So really trying to understand what does that look like. There is, I mentioned the European Commission Horizon Europe missions. There is a mission on oceans that we participate in. We're particularly focused on coastlines and coastal areas. We have a program, for example, actually one of the female-led startups in Tanzania is using algae to change the entire emissions systems of agricultural production. So really looking at what can we learn from coastal areas and coastal environments. So we will continue to participate there. One of our #1 areas of focus is even more so in water. It applies to everything, but even more so in water. The ways in which we work on understanding, learning, and transforming need to be systemic. And that includes governance. So water, actually, if you think about, that's where Elinor Ostrom trained herself on polycentric governance, opens up possibilities for the way in which we think about distributed collective ownership and responsibility and learn how to collaborate in much more sophisticated ways through multi-level governance, which is exactly what we now need in a lot of other areas of human activity. So creating this constant kind of learning and understanding in context. There will be a new KIC coming on water and marine that we will actively seek to participate in. It does deeply disturb me as someone who stepped in seven and a half years ago to working in a European climate organization, that water was not just naturally part of that frame. And, you know, again, it's a little bit the limitations. We think in sectors, we think of shipping and marine as separate to land and rivers, and, you know, the ways in which we need to unlearn a lot of those habits and relearn a much more integrated process is something we are seeking to apply to ourselves, but really also learning from the communities that we support and engage with.
Things need to change, and things need to change fast. We are running out of time. But we are entering also a new phase of EU policy making. We will get a new commission. There is a newly elected parliament. And we know that the Green Deal is under pressure. So how can Europe, can the EU be made responsible to act? So what are the options now? What can be done so that this process is not slowed down, that it does not stop? Of course, everything should remain democratic. So what is needed? What is needed on the European continent to take over that responsibility?
Leadership, vision, courage, the force majeure that is already happening and that is coming. But if I had to name a positive force for change, as opposed to the things that we can all name as a wish fulfillment and hope that something magically drops from the sky, subnational, cities and regions, communities, cities and regions. I'm also learning very deeply from the exchanges, the experiences that we have in Latin America and India, for example. Female-led community actors in informal communities are by far the most resilient, inventive, creative, sustainable communities we can possibly learn from. So if I look then and I apply that in a European context, or I look at what's happening in a European context, we will change from the bottom up because we must. And because that is the place where we individually connect with what we care for, what we love, where we find meaning every day. For me, the greatest hope that we have is that no matter the political shenanigans and the kind of divisive forces that are trying to tell us sustainability will make you poor, stop, there is a very solid understanding that we have to keep changing. And it's really sitting close to the ground where the action is.
And when we know that we need the cities, and this is also something we do in the Deconfining project, our analysis was the same. If this international relation should become better, then we need the local level, we need the cities, we need the regions, and there we can build the huge crowds. But the reality shows also it's not so easy to mobilize them, and it's not so easy to make them strong. Do you have ideas?
Yeah, so I mean, let me take an example that it was unexpected for me. The Italian government has launched an initiative to support symbiotic partnership between communities in Italy and communities in Africa, based on diaspora, but explicitly focused on symbiosis. Not the usual, we'll give you money and make ourselves feel better, or we'll go through some kind of superficial notion of value exchange, but actually asking for proposals for symbiosis. If you think about that in the fact of the context of what's called Team Europe and the Global Gateway, Europe is really trying to work out how to acknowledge origins, responsibility of origins, how to create partnerships. The principle of symbiosis is interesting because it helps take a whole region that is the European continental shelf, the African continent, the Mediterranean in the middle. You have huge needs, concerns, and cares in both places on an aging population, on migration, on water and food stress. Africa will have 40%, is it 40? Yes, 40% of the global population under 25 by 2050. That's enormous. That is the greatest human wealth on the planet. How to create that really genuine care, symbiosis, justice, exchange, creativity, not looking, I think, in the rear view. That doesn't help us because the future is not going to be seen in the rear view mirror, but looking forward into something unprecedented.
But in order to drive that energy which would be available, it needs a decolonized system.
And you need human relationships. You need community trust building, where it has been possible to create some form of foundation on which we begin to want to work with one another differently. Then I think symbiosis at the level of community, of diaspora, of city to region to community to small town, that begins to help.
And I think on this positive note, we end our conversation. Thank you, Kirsten, for the interesting exchanges. And thank you to your audience for the patience. Thank you.
Ocean. Ocean. By ocean. High. By ocean. High ocean. I ocean. Kai. By ocean. By ocean. By ocean. Ocean. By ocean. Shy ocean. Sigh ocean. Dry ocean. Dry Ocean, shy, ocean, sigh. Ocean. Sky, try. Die. Ocean. Ocean. Why? Ocean. Fly. Ocean. Hi. Ocean. Hi. Ocean. Hi. Ocean. Sky. Ocean. Ocean. Shy. Ocean.
Bonsoir à tous. Je pense que ce film est une très belle introduction à notre panel. Après l'excellent dialogue qu'il y a eu, déjà je vais vous expliquer pourquoi je parle en français, parce que je pense que c'est très important aussi dans le cadre de ce projet qui est Deconfining, de prendre en charge effectivement toutes les langues, tout le monde entier, c'est aussi et toutes les réalités. Nous avons plusieurs langues dans le cadre de notre projet, qui compte un certain nombre de villes, d'acteurs, et il faut bien cette représentativité. Alors, je vous prie de m'excuser pour mon français, mais je pense qu'il y a la traduction qui va pouvoir vous aider. Donc, ce film qui est une belle introduction à notre panel, pour que nous puissions explorer ensemble aujourd'hui ce que la culture et les arts, bien sûr Kirsten et Sylvia l'ont déjà un petit peu évoqué, s'emparent de cette question de l'écologie, du climat, peut-être de l'équité, du vivre ensemble, et que sais-je, tout ce qui induit ces réflexions, tout ce qui va vers ces réflexions. Dans cette table ronde, excusez-moi, on va s'intéresser à ce que l'art permet de saisir par les sens, le caractère indépendant de l'humain, mais aussi du plus qu'humain, y compris les histoires indissociables de la violence coloniale et de la dégradation environnementale, et qui situe l'art comme une plateforme inclusive pour la communication et le militantisme écologique. Alors aujourd'hui, on va se proposer d'apprendre peut-être à s'écouter ensemble, essayer de se déplacer un petit peu, regarder d'un autre point de vue. Et c'est ça que je vous propose aujourd'hui avec les trois invités que nous avons aujourd'hui. Comme vous voyez, nous avons fait aussi ce choix d'être entre femmes. C'est aussi, en effet, politique, c'est aussi pour dire quelque chose. Et je vais passer maintenant à la présentation de ma première invitée, dont j'ai fait la connaissance hier. Et effectivement, je pense que si nous n'avions pas eu à échanger tout ce que nous avons échangé pendant une journée, peut-être le débat aurait été un peu différent. Mais aujourd'hui que je connais un peu mieux Anna, je vais faire une présentation un peu brève de son parcours pour que vous sachiez un petit peu qui elle est. Et après, nous allons rentrer dans une conversation un petit peu plus directe. Donc, Anna Lessing-Menjibar est une performeuse danseuse, chorégraphe et artiste multidisciplinaire germano-espagnole. Née et basée à Berlin. En 2020, elle est diplômée du programme de Master en Art et de la performance Solo Dance Authorship à HZT, how do you say that? HZT Berlin, is that the... Yeah. Le Centre interuniversitaire pour la danse de l'Université des Arts de Berlin. Avant, elle a étudié la communication visuelle et a obtenu son diplôme à l'Université des Arts de Berlin. Elle est aussi directrice artistique et éditrice dans le domaine de la culture et de l'art. Parallèlement, Anna Lessing-Menjibar travaille depuis de nombreuses années comme chorégraphe et soliste de danse flamenco. Elle étudie donc le flamenco et le tisse des compositions corporelles et sonores dans des installations multimédia en travaillant avec la danse, la chorégraphie, la musique électronique, la vidéo, la photographie et des éléments sculpturaux. Le film que vous avez pu voir, qui est une partie du projet assez important, Dry Ocean, qu'elle va vous présenter. Je vais donc lui donner la parole pour qu'elle vous présente ce beau projet et pour rentrer dans notre sujet. Merci Anne.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit more late. And maybe I start why I speak English, because I'm here in the name of Dry Ocean. You just saw the video. And we are a collective based between Berlin and Dakar. We are up to 9 active artists collaborating, and the only language we can actually speak together is English. So I decided to also speak in English because I'm going to speak in behalf of my collective here today. And I want to start naming them. So we have Nathalie Virac, we have Badou, Aliudak, we have Ibaku, we have Ibrahim Atiam, Jivi Lee, Katja Aufleger, Agnes Stiller, Fabian Knecht. And we were part of the Deconfining, so we were here in March, and we will be able to work here for a few weeks, which was very important. So we are a collective of multidisciplinary artists. So you need to imagine that each of us has a different cultural background, a different religion, even a different past of colonial history, of fascist history, of wars. So all these informations are there between us in the space, and we meet, and it's exactly actually Dry Ocean, and that is the video you saw, is we don't even have different languages, we even have all different artistic practices. So what Dry Ocean is about is to meet and to find different ways how we can speak, how we can learn from each other, how we can unlearn, and even going to the base of culture, language, but also our artistic practice. So this is our language. And the process is the center. So we were hearing different ways of how we can engage, how we can actually create bridges. And we are called Dry Ocean because we invite the utopia, but we also invite the dystopia. So we're not putting these things out, but we want to put also the utopia of not having boundaries, not having this separation, because the ocean is actually right now, like physically, what is separating us, politically separating us. So it's a metaphor for something else that art can hopefully also contribute. Yeah.
Thank you very much. C'est effectivement très intéressant ce qu'elle explore dans ce projet. J'aurais quand même une petite question. C'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, tu dis que les mers, les océans, l'eau nous séparent. Mais comme le disait aussi Annie plus tôt, je pense aussi que c'est ce qui nous relie. Je lisais récemment Quand les conquérants espagnols sont partis par les mers conquérir ces terres, et quand on parle de terre, on part toujours de mer. Enfin, et d'ailleurs, c'est par ces voies qu'on partait. Ça crée des liens. C'est là aussi que certains termes sont nés. Au Moyen-Âge, le terme même d'inégalité n'existait pas. On ne pouvait pas le penser. Aujourd'hui, la réalité qui est la mer, et effectivement ce que sont les eaux, et on le perçoit assez bien, c'est aussi effectivement ce qui nous lie et ce qui nous délie. J'ai souvent cet exemple que je donne, puisque je suis aussi un petit peu politique. Au Sénégal, il y a eu ce projet qui a été assez intéressant. L'Union européenne avait mis en place un projet pour jeter les eaux usées à la mer. Ça a été un projet énorme, colossal, beaucoup d'argent, peut-être 8 ans de travail. Je travaille pour la mairie de Dakar comme conseillère et je sais qu'à l'époque, on leur disait « ça ne peut pas fonctionner. Les populations n'accepteront pas que vous jetiez de l'eau sale dans cette mer qui est peuplée de génies. C'est la baie de Han, il y a traditionnellement une réalité dans cette zone. Il y a une prise en charge de la mer que vous ne pouvez pas comprendre. » Ils se sont effectivement entêtés, je pense, en parlant aussi, et c'est là que, si j'avais été dans le panel précédent, j'aurais eu beaucoup de choses à dire, en parlant avec certaines communautés aussi avec qui il y avait une adhésion. Et qu'est-ce qui s'est passé à la fin du projet? Les populations, au bout de 3 jours, sont venues casser l'émissaire. Ça ne fonctionnait pas. Aujourd'hui, d'après vous, et peut-être que je vais me tourner vers toutes les deux et on peut faire un peu ce dialogue. Peut-être qu'Afrie est là aussi. Ah, super, Afrie est là aussi. Comment pensez-vous aujourd'hui ce lien déjà entre la femme et la mère? En quoi peut-il être porteur de solutions? Et de quelle manière votre travail artistique aujourd'hui l'investit? Alors, je n'ai pas présenté les autres panélistes. Je vais maintenant présenter Lucía. Sorry, I get my... Alors, Lucía Mbomío Rubio, is that it? est titulaire d'un diplôme en sciences de l'information, d'un diplôme en scénarisation et réalisation de documentaires à l'Institut de cinéma de Madrid et d'un master en développement et aide internationale. En 2005, elle commence à travailler pour la télévision, pour laquelle elle a réalisé des documentaires et a été reporter pour Télé Madrid, Antena 3 et TVE 1. Dans des programmes tels que Madrid Directo, Españoles en el Mundo, un programme récompensé par l'Académie de la télévision, et actuellement Aquí la Tierra, lauréat d'un prix Ondas, c'est ça? Elle a collaboré à Hoy por Hoy Madrid, vraiment désolée pour mon accent terrible, et a été l'une des voix de la Ventana, un programme quotidien de la chaîne SER. Elle a également tenu une rubrique dans El País intitulée Barrionalismos.
Parler du quartier.
Okay. Et à ce jour, elle continue d'écrire pour ce journal et d'autres. Ce qui me semble aussi intéressant, et ce qu'elle m'a dit tout à l'heure, c'est qu'elle-même a bougé. Ça, je ne l'avais pas dans sa présentation, mais elle m'a expliqué comment elle est arrivée, effectivement, de la Guinée équatoriale pour l'Espagne, pour finalement repartir chez elle, pour finalement revenir en Europe. Pas en Espagne, puisqu'elle l'a décidé. Et je pense aussi que ces mouvements sont intéressants. Elle pourra peut-être nous en parler aussi dans le cadre de ses interventions. Mais je te laisse donc la parole.
Merci bien. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Muchas gracias a las personas que estáis aquí. Y gracias también a mis compañeras. Yo también quiero explicar por qué hablo español, aunque ella ya lo ha dicho un poco. Y es porque he nacido aquí. Y esto que parece una obviedad, pues tampoco lo es tanto, especialmente hace 43 años, porque hay esta idea de que España es solo blanca, ¿no? Esto para empezar. Y porque además hay un borrado colonial que provoca que Guinea Ecuatorial esté completamente fuera del imaginario colectivo, ¿no? La gente todavía nos siguen enseñando que las últimas colonias fueron Cuba, Puerto Rico y Filipinas, pero se olvidan de que hay un país en África Central, el único país que habla español de todo el continente, que jamás citan. Y efectivamente me fui a vivir para allá. En cuanto a cómo conecto agua, mujer y demás, y luego también con mi trabajo, una de las cosas que he visto, es verdad que he tenido la suerte de viajar muchísimo como periodista y de vivir en diferentes lugares como persona afrodiaspórica que no se ha sentido en casa en el lugar al que debería llamar casa, ¿no? Entonces, eso me ha servido para ver que en un montón de sitios, sobre todo por la división de trabajo por la cual confinan a las mujeres a las tareas domésticas, a una cocina, digamos que los lugares de agua eran los espacios, no voy a decir de libertad, pero sí de conexión entre otras mujeres, ¿no? Ya fuera el lavadero, ya fuera el río. Además era un sitio en el que se charlaba, sí, se podía cotillear, pero también se desahogaban. Tenían sus romances entre mujeres, algo que está prohibido y todavía en muchos lugares, lamentablemente. Me decía el otro día una amiga de Guinea Ecuatorial que, por ejemplo, en el río, que nosotras, la etnia Fang y también gente que vive en África Central, pueblos como el de los pigmeos, por ejemplo, hacemos percusión en el agua, ¿no? Los tambores de agua. Y ella decía que esto no solo se utiliza para divertirse, sino también para avisar al amante de que estabas en tal sitio, ¿no? Y esto me parece también interesante. Por otro lado, como periodista he documentado cómo el agua todavía es una quimera en muchos sitios, el agua corriente. Soy de un lugar en el que no hay sequía originariamente, soy de Guinea Ecuatorial. Ahí somos contexto de selva, no hay problemas de sequía, somos o hemos sido uno de los principales productores de petróleo del continente africano, siendo un país pequeñísimo. Tenemos una de las grandes presas, Giblo, que podría dar energía tanto a Camerún como a Gabón. Y sin embargo no tenemos agua corriente en nuestras casas porque muchas veces hay apagones y esto está conectado con las bombas de agua, ¿no? Y no hay electricidad y no hay agua en un país que produce petróleo y donde no falta el agua. Entonces, bueno, por otro lado, como persona nacida en España, con todos los privilegios que se derivan de ello, y como periodista, como persona que hace trabajaciones, y creo que esto va a ser un poco difícil traducir, o sea, que aprovecha sus vacaciones para hacer trabajos que no caben en los medios de comunicación en los que trabajo, lamentablemente, porque hay temas que no interesan, hay miradas que no interesan y hay fuentes que no interesan tampoco. No puedo evitar pensar en el estrecho de Gibraltar y en el mar Atlántico como un lugar que es una tumba, no de ahora, desde hace demasiados siglos, me temo, en donde es un sitio que podría ser puente, pero que también es frontera. Con un continente africano, por otro lado, cuyo cordón umbilical con respecto a sus diásporas jamás se cortó, ¿no? Es puente y es frontera, insisto. Es frontera en tanto en cuanto están, pues, ¿no? Esto que contaba antes de los peces que tienen en su interior restos de seres humanos, debería ser intolerable, pero está tolerado por unos medios de comunicación en donde hemos convertido en normal lo atroz, cuando no debería serlo, donde nos hemos acostumbrado a ver a diario en esos medios de comunicación a personas que mueren en el Mediterráneo y en el Atlántico cuando no debería serlo, ¿no? Pero al mismo tiempo he dicho que también es puente porque hay Áfricas en muchos otros sitios, no solo en el continente. Hablo de Europa, por supuesto, porque es donde vivo y donde he nacido, pero también en Latinoamérica. Y además, claro, hay una África hispanohablante en esa Afrie Latinoamérica, con la cual, ya digo, he podido, gracias al periodismo, pues conectar, ¿no? A veces sin necesidad de pasar también por España, porque hay veces que parece que África solo se puede comunicar con Latinoamérica a través de Europa, por lo menos el África hispanohablante, pero cada vez más nos estamos comunicando en horizontal. He tenido la suerte de entrevistar a más de 100 mujeres, una de ellas está aquí, negras, africanas, afrodiaspóricas, de las 3 orillas. Ella aparte me recordó que me estaba pasando de entrevistar a las afroeuropeas, que qué pasaba con las africanas, y tenías toda la razón. Creo que también desde los medios de comunicación, y esto es importante, ¿no? Yo hago aquí una labor de denuncia desde dentro de los medios, porque hay una idea de la mujer negra africana que es como mujer negra africana, súper sacrificada, madre de 300, peques, es verdad que cuando llega aquí se convierte en madre negligente, ¿no? Cuando estás en África es madre a la que se admira, madre coraje, pero si vienes aquí, especialmente si se te ocurre venir embarazada con un bebé en el regazo, ya eres madre negligente, ya hay quita de custodias porque no puedes pues quizá alimentar a tus peques y demás. Y esto me parece interesante. Y luego, ¿qué pasa con todas estas mujeres también que vienen aquí? Porque en España hay una narrativa en los medios de comunicación de gente que llega, pero nunca está ni es. ¿Qué pasa con todas esas mujeres que sí que están aquí, que sí que están contribuyendo, que sí que son vecinas, igual que el resto? Bueno, pues que en muchos casos están alimentando la mano de obra semiesclava en una de las huertas de Europa, que no solo están en España, pero también están en España. También están en el sur de Italia, también están en el sur de Grecia, en lugares que son milagros económicos gracias a los cuerpos de esas mujeres, que en muchos casos además son abusadas sexualmente. Es una huerta de Europa un milagro gracias o por desgracia, ¿no?, a la explotación de acuíferos de una manera completamente pues, terrible, ¿no?, porque está cargándose los recursos de las generaciones futuras. Y bueno, y están trabajando en condiciones y viviendo en condiciones tan feas que Philip Alston, relator de las Naciones Unidas, comentó que lo que se vivía entre las trabajadoras y los trabajadores de la huerta de Europa o de las huertas de Europa era bastante peor que en algunos campos de refugiados, ¿no? Y yo creo que esto es súper importante tenerlo también en cuenta. Entonces, bueno, pues yo he intentado contar esto a través de reportajes que hago con el móvil, porque en la televisión lamentablemente esto no interesa.
Merci beaucoup. C'est, à mon avis, extrêmement nécessaire, comme on le disait tout à l'heure, de raconter, de mettre en lumière des récits qui ne le sont pas, et peut-être d'un prisme un peu différent. Ces histoires de bateaux qui partent et qui reviennent, il y a aussi cette image très, très dure mais très belle du Sénégal. Vous savez que Dakar a été construite par une ethnie de pêcheurs, les Lébous. Enfin, c'était les premiers à s'être installés là. Aujourd'hui, les mêmes bateaux, les mêmes pirogues qui servaient à l'époque aux pêcheurs pour nourrir leur famille, se nourrir eux-mêmes, avoir une dignité humaine, ils s'en servent aujourd'hui pour aller envahir l'Europe, et c'est une réalité. Ce sont ces mêmes bateaux qui sont là. Les contrats européens de pêche, effectivement, à mon avis, sont en question également sur ces réalités. Et je pense que quand on raconte l'histoire, il faut effectivement le raconter un peu de tous les côtés et de voir comment ça se passe. La migration perçue d'un côté est une chose, mais pourquoi ces gens partent et de quelle manière et pour quelles raisons? C'est encore une fois pour garder cette dignité, et je reviens à ce lien que tout à fait a fait Kirsten. Moi, je suis convaincue que le lien entre la terre et la mer est une réalité. L'accès à la terre, vous avez beaucoup parlé tout à l'heure de l'agriculture, le réinvestir l'agriculture, réinvestir la terre. Tout à l'heure, Ami aussi en a parlé. Comment le symbolisme, les symboles, le réinvestissement de ces patrimoines que nous avons tous dans nos cultures de manière différente peuvent être aujourd'hui porteurs de solutions. Comme tu le disais, cette mère qui va avoir l'image dans un espace, être complètement négligente, mais dans un autre qui va être la reine. Elle a toutes les cartes en main pour pouvoir être la reine. Et c'est ça aussi, à mon avis, l'exercice qu'on essaye tous de faire ensemble ici et dans le cadre de ce projet, c'est vraiment de questionner tout ça. Comment voir les choses de manière un peu plus large. Il y a aussi la question des réalités d'espace. Il y a effectivement tout le temps la tendance de dire, bon, même Kirsten tout à l'heure l'a dit, l'Italie en face de l'Afrique. Non, l'Italie peut-être en face du Sénégal, l'Italie en face mais ce sont des réalités tellement différentes. Et vous allez dans une communauté du Mozambique ou Moi, j'ai plus, à mon avis, en tant que Française, de reconnaissance avec un Sénégalais qu'un Sénégalais avec, je ne sais pas, un Éthiopien. Et c'est la réalité. Donc, la symbiose dont tu parlais tout à l'heure, et je pense que ce rapport identificatoire aussi lié à l'individu, la femme malgré tout dans l'image aussi à ce rôle à jouer. Ami nous l'a aussi rappelé beaucoup tout à l'heure. Et je suis ravie donc de passer à Afrie, que je ne vois pas malheureusement, donc c'est un peu perturbant pour moi, mais je sais qu'elle me voit. Donc je vais vous la présenter. Elle est malheureusement pas, elle n'a pas pu venir avec nous. Elle nous parle d'Ouganda. Nous sommes ravis qu'elle soit. Okay. Yeah. No, but she's not with us here. Donc, Afrie, I don't know if I have to say Afrie ou Afrie. Afrie est une cinéaste, musicienne et défenseur de l'éducation des filles en Ouganda. Elle aime raconter des histoires sur les femmes africaines dans leur couleur, leur puissance et leur authenticité. Afrie a étudié à l'Université de Californie du Sud, à la Henley Business School, South Africa, et à l'Université Kenyatta. Elle a été nommée ambassadrice de l'Union africaine UA-CIE-FFA pour l'initiative Campagne continentale Africa Educates Her pour sauvegarder les droits des filles à l'éducation. Sa chanson, Let Her Know, est le thème de cette campagne. Bon, j'aurais adoré lui faire chanter la chanson, mais je ne sais pas si on a le temps. Son film documentaire Little Face est l'une des premières femmes médecins de Karamoja, une région rurale de l'Ouganda, et a été récompensée par un prix. Elle a réalisé Waba, un film documentaire sur la quête de l'eau, dans lequel elle explore la relation entre l'eau et les femmes. Alors, Afrie, peut-être que tu peux nous expliquer pourquoi tu as voulu travailler sur cette relation entre l'eau et les femmes, et en quoi... Oui, d'abord... tu vas nous expliquer.
All right. Hi, thank you so much for having me. For me, I found the relationship between water and women interesting and perplexing at the same time. And I found so many similarities between water and women, just even in terms of, one, the nature of water, but also in terms of the perception of African women in most of the societies in sub-Saharan Africa. I come from Uganda, but I've had the privilege of studying in Kenya and therefore exploring the situation that women, especially those living in rural Kenya, in particular the Maasai people, experience. So I would like to say that, water is colorless, tasteless, and it's plain to most senses. And if we hold that thought in most of the African societies, I would say sub-Saharan, and in particular, the ones that I have worked with, the nomadic pastoral communities, for example, in Kenya, southwestern Kenya, you find that there is a perception of women that is as if they are second-class citizens. You can see that through the inequality, the poverty, but also just practices that are harmful to women, like early marriage or female genital mutilation, that in a way cut off a girl's access to opportunity, a girl's access to education, a girl's access to dreaming, and in that way suggests that a woman is inferior to a man, and kind of nullify the contribution that women bring to such societies, and claim that these contributions are devoid of sweat or of the grit it really takes to build these societies. And yet, ironically, you find that, for example, the Maasai, the nomadic pastoral community, and most of the time, the men are actually not in the communities because these communities are in arid places that just don't have a full supply of water. So most of the time, the men are away with the animals in search for water. And who stays at home to actually build the community, not just socially, but also economically? It's the women. So the women are the backbone of these communities. But for some reason, because of perceptions, they're not seen that way. Their contribution is not respected or accepted, much as it's very much present. So in a way, that's just like water, because their contribution is viewed as colorless, tasteless, and plain to most senses. Yet still, just like water, water is life. And their contribution brings life. Their contribution is life, because women really are the backbone of these communities. It's mostly evident in the rural communities, of course, because of like capitalism and how far back they have been pushed, and different other reasons. But I wanted to explore this relationship because I had seen it. I've grown up in suburban Kampala, which is in Uganda, but at the same time, I could see that the relationship between water and women was mostly evident for me from an artistic point of view from the rural communities. And that's why I explored it. I was curious about it, and I knew that water was a resource that is so much acknowledged by the whole of humanity, because we can't live without it. And what we don't realize is that women are pretty much just the same. Yes.
Merci beaucoup, Afrie. Et je pense en effet que l'évidence dont tu parles, micro working. Je pense que l'évidence dont tu parles n'est pas forcément évident pour tout le monde. Et le fait de le mettre aussi en lumière, et ce qui est très étonnant, c'est que ce qu'on voit chez nous dans nos réalités africaines, cette évidence est peut-être plus commune. En Europe, il y a peut-être aussi cette déconnexion un peu plus réelle avec la terre, avec les choses un peu primaires. J'aime bien aussi des fois quand je vois des projets passer à la ville de Dakar, tout le temps on parle d'indigènes, ce qui me fait toujours un peu sursauter, mais cette notion primitive, on veut souvent donner un aspect négatif, et encore une fois, Annie nous l'a bien montré tout à l'heure, le réinvestissement de ces traditions, de ces patrimoines qui parfois ont été enterrés volontairement par d'autres, sont effectivement porteuses de solutions. Comment vous voyez, vous? Alors, je vais repasser peut-être la parole à Anna dans un premier temps. Comment tu perçois cela? Comment tu...
I'm doing a little dance. Yeah, so I think there you connect to a very deep matter for myself, because I grew up with flamenco dance, and it is an art form that comes from marginalization, from a pain, from a space for resistance, but also a ritual, a collective space for a transformation, for a catharsis, where we were speaking. And it is an art form that is informed by so many nomadic cultures, but also slavery, persecution from the Romani, so many different cultures. And there lies a knowledge in a tradition, in a heritage that was brought from one body, from one culture to the other. And I think, and this is something that our collective is also speaking a lot about, is like, okay, how can we as contemporary artists bring this knowledge and contribute to the knowledge that we are given from our ancestors, from our families, from our communities? How can we continue this knowledge and share and create something new, something own with it? So what I do in my own artistic practice, I work with that knowledge in my body, with the music knowledge in rhythm, in harmonies and music composition, and I bring it into a performative contemporary space. And I combine it with other means of expression, with text, because there's the knowledge of poetry in flamenco. There's the knowledge of the knowledge that we need spaces collectively to heal, to express pain. And we were also speaking about how can we create also a space for loss, because then the loss is less painful if we can do it collectively. And at the same time, and here we come to the women, for me, it is a dance that allows a sexual body, a grotesque body, a female empowered body, and that is stamping into the earth. And there's such a deep knowledge in so many cultures of stamping the earth and receiving back from Mother Earth energy into the body to empower. So how can these, and I think if we speak of politics and everything, these are, they are tools. And these are technologies, and they're just different technologies. They are technologies that come through art. And how can we share those and transform and continue, let them grow together, you know? And yeah, so this is one very deep research also in our collective, because everyone, each single person brings the knowledge from a different culture that is in many cases being lost, or like also in Spain, used by fascism or some other, you know, like colonial different views on things, and then mistaken. So how can we actually share the knowledge and again create a new technology that bridges, you know? And yeah.
Merci beaucoup. Et je pense qu'en effet, ce que tu dis est passionnant, et je crois que dans les pratiques et même dans le travail de partage, on voit à quel point c'est ce que nous disait hier le très beau film que nous avons vu qui s'appelle El Agua, que parfois la fiction a une telle place dans la réalité qu'elle est porteuse de solutions. C'est-à-dire que les imaginaires, et j'ai beaucoup aimé le mot qu'elle a répété beaucoup, être créatif, c'est-à-dire comment on porte de manière concrète, par des formes fictionnelles, artistiques, imaginatives, des solutions très concrètes. Tout à l'heure, on a abordé effectivement les contraintes pour le milieu de l'art dans cette transition verte, les challenges écologiques, etc. Mais au-delà de ça, il y a aussi, je pense, dans les pratiques artistiques, et on va en parler très rapidement avant de conclure, parce que je crois que bientôt on va devoir, mais c'est comment on peut, par de nouvelles pratiques, aborder aussi un nouveau matérialisme, un nouvel usage des matières. On a parlé effectivement de se déplacer. Et hier, tu me disais ça très bien, c'est que se déplacer, c'est d'abord par le sentiment, c'est par le fait de l'expérimenter. On travaille, et tu me l'as dit aussi, mais le danseur a besoin l'art vivant, de se mettre en spectacle devant son public. Il a besoin de voyager, il a besoin d'être sur le territoire. Par contre, dans la pratique artistique, effectivement, comment vous qui êtes dans le cinéma, dans l'écriture, la reproduction, moi-même qui suis éditrice aujourd'hui, publier un livre, c'est entre l'encre, le transport du papier, c'est effectivement un vrai problème. Donc, est-ce que nous nous posons des contraintes dans la production ou finalement plus dans l'approche artistique? Et j'aimerais que vous me parliez un petit peu de ça dans dans ton travail peut-être.
Vous avez dit l'approximation, l'approcher.
L'approche matérialiste de ton travail. Comment est-ce qu'aujourd'hui tu as une approche différente avec ces challenges écologiques? Est-ce que dans ta pratique, tu l'abordes différemment?
Bueno, sobre todo el cambio se ha producido más en temáticas e inevitablemente en desplazamientos. Al final yo soy periodista y me muevo mucho, voy a un montón de lugares, entonces sí que ahí se ha producido un cambio. Y luego también esta idea de interseccionalidad, ¿no? De entender a quién afecta más según qué cosas, cambiar las fuentes, porque, claro, al final, y lo estaba comentando antes, ¿no? Nosotras también arrastramos una serie de colonialidades y pendientes de deconstruir, y eso incluye pues no tener en cuenta a veces ciertas voces, etcétera, etcétera, ¿no? Pero sí que un poco rescatando lo que tú has dicho de compartir, ¿no? Que es lo que a mí me facilitan también las redes sociales, porque yo me comunico por ahí, por lo que comentaba de que los medios de comunicación no siempre tienen espacios ciertos mensajes. Una de las cosas que yo estoy haciendo y partiendo de la herencia y la tradición, una de las herencias o de las tradiciones importantes es el respeto a las personas mayores, ¿no? Que aquí quizá en Europa pues ya no se lleva a cabo, o no tanto al menos. No me acuerdo si es el 54 o el 56% de las personas migrantes que están en España llevan más de 10 años aquí. Eso habla de un arraigo. Sin embargo, en los medios de comunicación, como decía, siempre acabamos de llegar y la gente tiene en la cabeza que persona migrante es hombre negro que viene de África negra a través del mar. O sea, que es un senegalés joven. Sin embargo, hay un 56% que lleva un montón de tiempo. ¿Qué pasa cuando la gente envejece? ¿Dónde están las personas negras africanas en el imaginario español? Si ni siquiera existo yo, ¿cómo va a existir una persona de 85 años como es mi padre? ¿Dónde están sus problemáticas? En su caso, demencia con cuerpos de Lewy. ¿Acaso se pueden tratar de la misma manera que una persona blanca española que tiene aquí toda su familia? En el caso de mi padre, ¿qué pasará cuando pierda la lengua? Por ejemplo, ¿no? Cuando pierda el castellano, porque a pesar de que en Guinea Ecuatorial la lengua oficial es el español, su lengua primaria es el fang. ¿Qué pasa con todas esas personas que llevan un montonazo de tiempo aquí, pero que quizá en la primera franja de su vida han estado en situación irregular, no han podido cotizar? En el caso de las mujeres, solo les han dejado trabajar en limpieza y cuidados, tienen los cuerpos rotos, han inhalado productos de limpieza que han sido profundamente tóxicos, sus pensiones son súper bajitas, su autoestima también. Bueno, yo puse en marcha un proyecto que se llama Afromayores de entrevista, junto a 2 compañeros, de entrevistas a personas negras de más de 65 años de África y de las diásporas. Y hay una clara diferencia de género, ¿no? O sea, a la hora de envejecer, porque en general todo el mundo dice no nos ven, no existimos, para el imaginario estamos completamente fuera, a veces también para las personas afrodescendientes, ¿no? que ya se han desconectado quizá del continente y que no tienen en cuenta a las personas mayores que tienen unas vivencias súper específicas. Pero otra de las cosas que yo he visto es eso, que independientemente de en qué se hayan formado, de los idiomas que hablen, etcétera, etcétera, nunca les han dejado hacer otra cosa. Entonces, las mujeres no tienen, no es que no tengan autoestima, pero tienen una autoestima súper, súper bajita. Entonces, Afromayores es una oportunidad de que sepan que sabemos que están, de que sepan que lo poquito que hemos conseguido es gracias a que estuvieron, a buena parte de sus luchas, también las perdidas, ¿no? Y que somos porque fueron, porque son todavía, pero porque fueron también por quienes nos precedieron. Y bueno, yo creo que ella hablaba de compartir, para mí es esto, ¿no? Amplificar, transformar, compartir, escuchar, dar lugar, reconocer. Creo que esto es un poco lo que estoy haciendo a través de mi trabajo y cómo esto también conecta además con una tradición que todavía se mantiene, aunque se expresa de otras maneras. Y también el tema de la imagen. Al final yo trabajo con la imagen, hay fotografía, hay una idea de la vejez o cómo se traslada la vejez en términos de imagen, que es siempre pobrecitismo, dolor, ¿no? Algo, casi hay un tabú. En cambio, las personas a las que hemos entrevistado, fotografiado, salen preciosas y salen riéndose. Y las fotos que hemos impreso son gigantescas, ¿no? Para que se vean. Recuerdo que uno de los entrevistados se vio y dijo: soy la hostia. No sé cómo, a ver cómo lo traducí, ¿no? Pero estoy guapísimo. Y eso me parece maravilloso porque por ser personas negras, por toda la colonialidad que hay en torno a los cuerpos también, ¿no? Y cómo es difícil leerse bonita cuando nunca te ves o cuando el entorno te ve de otra manera. Pero además por personas mayores es súper complicado. Y ahí están preciosos y preciosas con sus más de 65 años y además siendo admiradas y reconocidas y vistas.
Merci beaucoup. Ce que tu dis est très drôle parce que c'est vrai que moi, quand je suis arrivée au Sénégal, tout le monde me disait, mais m'appelait la blanche et je ne comprenais pas pourquoi. Je me sentais... Et en France, tout le monde m'appelait l'étrangère. Donc, j'avais un problème de représentation de mon... C'est après qu'on apprend à se regarder soi-même. Mais peut-être justement, Afrie, tu peux nous dire, toi, du continent africain, parce qu'il y a aussi ces questions-là, la question de l'approche environnementale du point de vue africain, puisque nous allons aller un peu plus large que sur l'eau, mais qui est souvent perçu comme un problème subsidiaire à d'autres problèmes, puisque nous avons effectivement la question même du vivre ensemble, comme tu disais, parfois des dictatures, parfois un problème de gouvernance, parfois des problèmes véritables un peu auxquels sont confrontées les populations de base. Et quand il y a un rapport avec l'Europe, il y a comme un peu ce déséquilibre parfois. L'Africain dit, écoutez, nous, ce ne sont pas nos priorités, et pourquoi nous parler de ces réalités de ces choses-là, alors que nous, on a besoin pour pouvoir manger, nous avons besoin de passer par l'industrie, nous avons besoin de passer par toutes ces choses-là par lesquelles l'Europe est passée. Et ce débat que je vois souvent agité un peu partout et de tous les côtés, j'aimerais savoir, toi, Afrie, comment tu vois ça et quel est ton discours? Enfin, c'est évidemment autant avec les autres Africains, tes échanges, mais aussi avec l'Europe. Et comment tu le travailles par ton travail artistique?
Thank you. For me, Africa is at a point where we're transitioning in an interesting way. We are trying to mentally decolonize, mentally try and understand what we went through in generations past, and trying to fill the gaps, because there's so many gaps even in our information, even in our history. Most of our history that we learn in schools, for example, is just dated back to late 1800s, just before the explorers or colonialists came to the East African coast in the early 1900s. So most of the history that we're working with is from that point of view, and most of our understanding of who we were is from that point of view, which is just shortly before our borders were created and Africa got the name that it has right now. So right now we're at a point of most of the young generation is trying to fill in the gaps. Who are we in the 1600s? Who are we in the 1500s? Who are we in the 1300s? I mean, then there's not enough information in terms of literature, but in terms of oral history, there is. And so we're trying to just find and fill in those gaps so that we can form a wholesome image of who we really are beyond our borders. About what you have said, that there are probably more pressing problems in Africa, considering most of the countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, are, developing countries. And so the basic need is, we need water, we need food, we need electricity. People are living hand to mouth, day to day. Self-actualization is like a far-off goal. But my belief as an artist is that for us to truly experience life and the shared, life is a shared concept. For us to truly experience it, we need to heal fully, and healing is not only a personal journey. For you to heal fully, you really need to go all the way back to who you are, who your mother was, I find that wounds are grafted within our DNA, and DNA is something that's rooted all the way back. And so art is not, I believe that as an artist, art is not just a luxury that the African continent can't afford. I think that art is very instrumental, especially at this point of transition, for us to find who we were, for us to dig up the stories that were long forgotten, because I think that it's in those stories that we truly can track the depth of the problems that we may be having, or the roots of these problems, and therefore offer solutions to them. It's something that really excites me. At first, I used to get frustrated that, where were the records about Africa? But I think that then took me on a journey of searching. I've searched libraries just to find out about, okay, who were the Ugandans before Uganda became a country, before the scramble and partition. And I think that journey has brought me to a place of appreciation, because what I have found is something that has actually now inspired my art. I went for the search, looking for something, but it's interesting when you find, when your search is what revitalizes you, when your search becomes like water to your soul. And for me, that's what has happened. And I do believe that much of our healing really lies in digging up our past and, being one with it in a sense of reconciliation, healing, and moving forward. Yeah.
J'aime beaucoup ce terme, effectivement, de guérison qu'on a encore entendu et revu. Ce que tu dis, je pense, sur l'identité, effectivement, réapprendre à se regarder de manière un peu différente, avec des identités distinctes, mais pouvoir travailler collectivement. Et c'est ça aussi, je pense, l'objectif de ce projet-là, d'arriver à créer des dynamiques, comme le disaient aussi tout à l'heure Sylvia et Kirsten, de pouvoir créer des chaînes de valeurs dans lesquelles nous nous inscrivons, dans lesquelles nous arrivons à ensemble, de manière effectivement solidaire, investir un sujet. Nous savons effectivement aussi que le temps du monde aujourd'hui n'est pas forcément en notre faveur, c'est une réalité, mais que nous avons aussi beaucoup à porter sur ce terrain-là. Je pense aussi que encore une fois, les solutions et les solutions innovantes, puisque là, je le vois aussi en tant que conseillère culturelle du maire de Dakar, je reçois des délégations régulièrement pour apprendre comment se fait la démocratie participative au Sénégal, parce que nous sommes les champions depuis des années. Et cette question, par exemple, du partage, de l'échange avec ces communautés, de l'intégration de différentes réalités, autant communautaires que symboliques, que représentatives, sont extrêmement importantes, puisque en Afrique, nous avons ces réalités ethniques, nous avons toutes ces composantes qui fait que pour le vivre ensemble, nous sommes obligés, à un moment donné, et nous avons tous été obligés, de nous asseoir et de comprendre, de composer. En tout cas, le Sénégal est un bel exemple de ce dont je parle. Il y a aussi la réalité pour les pratiques artistiques, et ça, comme on le disait tout à l'heure, chez nous, dans nos territoires, effectivement, le manque de moyens, l'accès aux ressources, puisque c'est ça aussi que posent ces questions de la terre, de l'eau, l'accès aux ressources. Nos artistes, et il faut le dire, font avec très peu, parce qu'ils n'ont pas accès aux ressources d'un artiste contemporain en Allemagne. C'est une évidence, même pour produire sa peinture, qu'est-ce qu'il va aller chercher? Des pigments dans la terre. La recherche environnementale et de la pratique même écologique, artistique, a été pensée et vécue chez nous depuis extrêmement longtemps. Et peut-être que là-dessus, effectivement, les artistes européens ont à apprendre. Je reçois également régulièrement des gens qui travaillent sur le numérique, l'impression 3D et toutes ces choses-là. Chez nous, nous avons ces réalités aussi qui ont été implémentées depuis très longtemps. Comment on travaille sur des formes créatives très, très innovantes qui sont aujourd'hui peu vues ailleurs, ou en tout cas qui sont aujourd'hui découvertes ailleurs, mais sur lesquelles, par exemple dans le design, je pense au design, vous marchez dans une rue à Dakar, la chaise du gardien est designée pour son usage. L'approche du design est réelle et elle est pragmatique dans une forme très écologique avec très peu de moyens. Donc, en tout cas, j'ai été vraiment ravie d'être là avec vous ce soir. Je pense que c'est l'heure de clôturer cette table ronde. Merci à vous. J'ai été peut-être un peu trop bavarde comme modératrice. Excusez-moi, vraiment. Et merci à ceux qui nous accueillent, Antonia, Julia, pour ce très bel accueil, vous au public pour ce très bel échange, à Amy aussi pour sa très, très belle performance qui restera, à mon avis, gravée dans nos souvenirs. Et en espérant que tout ça puisse continuer, que nous arrivions à cheminer ensemble longtemps sur ces questions et que nous arrivions vraiment à construire des solutions pour demain. Je suis également très optimiste et je pense qu'il faut l'être malgré tout. Merci à vous tous. Dankeschön.
Thank you.